Have you ever looked at a kid or teen and thought, I know something's going on, but they won't tell me? You're not imagining it. You're noticing the feelings that don't have words yet. Today, we're diving into a topic that every parent, caregiver, and even adult who's still healing their younger self needs to hear. What kids and teens wish adults understood about their feelings. We're talking about the emotional world young people rarely put into words, the stress they hide, the fears they downplay, and the moments when their behavior is actually a quiet signal for help. Whether you're supporting a child in your life or reconnecting with your own emotional world, this episode is designed to bring insight, compassion, and clarity. I'm excited to interview Stacy H.E.R, who's got a master's degree and is a licensed professional counselor, educator, and mental health advocate known for her compassionate, down-to-earth approach to helping children, teens, and adults understand their emotional world. With years of experience in clinical practice, Stacy specializes in trauma-informed therapy, family dynamics, and supporting young people through big feelings and emotional shutdowns. On today's episode, she shares the insight she's learned from years of listening to young clients, the subtle ways emotional wounds show up in everyday behavior, and practical tools for supporting kids and ourselves. Stacy is also the author of a book called With Love from a Children's Therapist. Stacy, welcome to today's episode of Her Energy Unlocked. I'm so excited to have you here. So, Stacy, what are the biggest misunderstandings adults have about teen emotions?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. First of all, I'm really happy to be here. Well, I think what sometimes it gets tricky is that we as adults, if there is a teen in our life that we really want to connect with, we try to make a bridge that isn't always a stable, accurate bridge. What I mean by that is that a kid will tell me that they will go to a parent with a complaint, like I felt this about this thing at school. And sometimes either because of busyness or just trying to be instantly relatable or trying to fix it, they often hear, yeah, I get it. I was a kid once too. And I think that in today's day and age, and I wrote about this, kids feel like that's an instant shutdown because it's a different world than their parents lived in. I mean, the social media dynamics, the school violence issue, because I am in America, a lot of different things have shifted since 1984. So I think kids sometimes don't feel heard when the bridge is supposed to be like, no, I get you. I was your age once too. But sometimes that sentence can sever connection.
Just an observation when people say that, because I probably have said that myself. I'm gonna, nobody's a perfect parent. Yeah, I went through that too. But then I will also add, and what did I learn from that? And have I healed from all of that? Have I explored the emotions I felt during those things? Because I think sometimes maybe parents suppress that and they just think, well, that's just the way times were, so I'm going to put you through that same grinder. Well, how is that showing up for you in relationships you have now, whether it be with your spouse or your own parents? Pain goes somewhere. How can adults tell when a child is quietly struggling?
I mean, I think it really comes down to knowing the kid in front of you. Because a lot of times, I mean, and part of why I wrote a book was that I never saw myself represented in a textbook. Sometimes there's a book that's like how to help your defiant kid. And so someone's like, well, I think my kid's defiant. And so they'll try to relate based on a case study when really what kids need to know is, do you see me? And I think that a line that I like a lot, that I use a lot, that I ask kids is, help me understand what it's like to be you. And so I think that there needs to be that forged bridge before we can anticipate there's a kid struggling. I just had a friend she's also a kid therapist. Insufferable tragedy just happened. Her son died, and her 10-year-old son died. And I think that in that community, because it's a little bit of a smaller town, I think that one can guess that the majority of his friends are impacted somehow, but that's going to look different. A kid who's just naturally quieter, and so I think that it's really looking at who you have in front of you and who they are in order to see what is a baseline, what is typical. How can I support this kid?
So I'm going to add a different layer here to this because I'm the first one in my family born in Canada. And so I will add, when you're asking your children, hey, what does life look like for you right now? Ask with an open heart, not with, well, in my time, I didn't have XYZ. So generationally, every time we say that the next generation is getting quote unquote softer, or it's just a different world. It's a different world. And like you said, the social media, the bullying that continues even, can be continuing at home, that plays a big factor in the way things are. And I feel like this is like kind of the first generation that is just saying, hey, wait a minute here. What we've been doing for hundreds of years may not work now, right?
Yes. I love this generation, obviously. It's, my passion, but they are changing the stigma of like mental health support. Like they're like, yeah, my therapist said. Whereas like previous generations were like, so and so is seeing a therapist. Like, what's wrong with them? And that's saving lives. That's what that's doing.
And here's another conversation I've had, especially with my South Asian friends. They're like, well, we never talked about this before. And, our parents' generation was fine. It's like, were they? Because because I know a lot of alcoholic people in my family. I know a lot of domestic abuse victims in my family, and probably sexual abuse victims in, our extended family that never got talked about. So that pain went somewhere. I'm a firm believer, a lot of these things that we go to, these addictions, they stem from pain. This is observations. I'm obviously not a psychologist, but these are just observations. I'm like, there's pain there, and there's a reason you're covering the pain. And so that's why it's important to have those conversations that no, actually our previous generation is not with it.
It's kind of like bringing food to your room. Like it's fine for a while, but then you throw laundry over it and like more and more. And then it starts to smell. You smell it, and then later other people can smell it. And then you try to get all the layers to get it out, and it takes a while to remove the odor. And so that's like how I like kind of help kids get a mentality of like, let's not bury stuff under layers and layers of personality. Let's catch you on the front end before you build relationships that are not healthy, that are based on woundedness. Let's not do that.
And it's like, I know when my kids were younger, one of the things I learned in some parenting book was like, get down to their level. And so us as parents need to get down to that level to ask them, hey, what are you struggling with? And what does your life look like? Be open to those answers. So I want to talk a little bit about your book. So you just wrote a book this year, which is so exciting. Tell me why people, if you're listening to this podcast, why should they decide to pick up your book and read it?
Because it's so great. Okay, so my book, a podcast I was on, she described it. I like it. So this isn't my description, but I really liked it. She said that it is parts intense memoir, parts guide to not emotionally damage the next generation, part inner child healing support. And so basically, I've been in practice approaching 20 years. As a child adolescent young adult therapist. And over the years, there's been a lot of things that I have seen repeated that I want to share with the outside world, right? Because even though it shouldn't be, mental health support is a luxury. And so I'm like, there's a lot of people that will never, for a million reasons, like be able to afford to getting counseling. So I was kind of collecting like data over the years of like, oh, this is really relatable. And then about a decade ago, I started doing my own healing work, unpacking my own trauma, like doing like intense trauma work. Cause I have a pretty intense story. When I like started to actually sit down and write the book, I was like, well, there are actually nuggets from that too. And so it is like, it's kind of my offering of like, here's what I'm seeing on the other side of the couch for anyone who loves someone who's 11 or who was ever 11. So it is not just for parents, but that was the original intention.
What are some things that these young people are teaching you about emotional truths?
I see 3 to 30, but the majority of my caseload are tweens and teens. The social media piece, I think, is so tricky. Because as you alluded to like earlier, like bullying, back in the day, you could get left out of something and you just wouldn't know until you hear about it, right? I think that there's a lot of things that happen on social media that are intentionally to hurt other kids. For example, a friend group will be mad at a friend and then they'll go and make a TikTok and have some passive aggressive line that this what they know this one will see. They also, this is so bizarre to me and I don't get it, but they all track each other's location at all times.
Mm.
I think it's the weirdest thing because, like, I don't want anyone to know where I'm at work. That's all you need to know. Like, what? And so then, like, all of them will be at one location. And so I think I've learned a lot about distance from social media when one needs to because it is all consuming. And their brains aren't developed yet. So, of course, it's going to be. But the emotional regulation piece, like with social media, like, I could talk for a long time on that. And so I think that it's really tricky in that sense to be a kid because you're like, they don't escape from it. They go home and then they see things that wouldn't qualify as bullying. Like another adult would be like, they're just making TikTok. But like, it's this subtle, intentional hurting of one another.
Yeah, and that's why I think in Australia, they've now just banned social media
Yes.
for the age
I saw
under
that. I
16.
was just
Yeah.
like, they would have to have a lot of other things to talk about in session with me in Australia because that comes up so much. Yeah, I saw that. I think that's genius. And I'm sure like they're all mad.
The marketers wanna get in and, sway those young kids to have skincare routines, and how are you gonna do that without
Yes.
right? There's a big all
Yeah.
comes down to money.
I know. I'll tell kids, I'll be like, how do you think like these ads make you feel about yourself?
Mm.
And like it's just they're just like inundated with it, just inundated. And so I think that is a tricky piece. And then I have the kids whose parents are like, you don't get devices, and they're mad about it, but they're doing emotionally better.
But it's interesting, even, like, the bullying aspect, like you talked about, it's not only just saying those mean words, but everybody's gone to a party, and then they're posting it on Snapchat or Visco or whatever they do, and you're the only one home on a Friday night, essentially. And it's like, "So what? You didn't get invited to the party." Well, in high school, you think that's the biggest
It's
thing
like
ever.
everything. Well, and they also, it drives me nuts. Like it's called vague booking. They'll be like their caption, be like, don't you hate it when there's someone who wears blue all the time? Anyway, like it'll be like a direct like insult to this person that they will know, but someone's like, I don't care if someone, you know what I mean? Like they use do those things a lot, like, or like, don't you hate it when someone you thought was cool is no longer cool? Like they do that all the time.
It's so funny, so our youngest daughter is finishing high school this year, and I was talking about my high school experience, and I was very lucky and fortunate to have a great group of friends, and I was trying to think about what the drama was in high school, and I really can't think about it, and I think it's because it goes back to we all had good relationships, I feel, with our families, so that insecurity was never there, and then we never felt that in high school, and so what I would ask then is if you see, I know this, we kind of took this sideways and kind of got into social media, but it's such a big thing. If your child sees that and they've said, yeah, well, all my friends are at a party and this is how I feel, what, as you as a parent, what can you help them with or guide them with?
Yeah, I mean, I think that helping them see that it is okay to feel left out. It's okay to feel sad. Like it's okay to have those feelings. Like you don't want to stay there forever. Because I think so many times we try to rescue people from their feelings and like it just doesn't work. And so I think to be like, yeah, I like to validate, to be like, I would likely feel really left out too. And that feels really bad. Like have open-ended questions as opposed to, because good intentions, we want our people to not hurt and not suffer anymore. So we're like, yeah, but you're cooler than them and it's fine and whatever. Like you won't see them again after high school, whatever, whatever. And so I think to really like let your teen, your kid experience their feelings and that like the full gamut of emotions is part of the human experience. And like, yeah, I would be feeling like XYZ too. And so I'm here to talk about it because 9 times out of 10, like the whole, like, do you want advice or do you want to be heard? People want to be heard unless you're at the doctor.
And I will say time does heal everything over and over again, right? And I don't think kids are receptive when you go and say, "Well, yeah, I remember I was made fun of too, and this is what happened." And the kid's just sitting there like, "Yeah, whatever. Well, this is me right now."
But you know what
Yeah.
they are receptive to, like, with that strategy, and what in my experience, obviously changes kid per kid, but when it's an issue of shame, like that, like I have a kid that's like, I did this thing and I need to tell you, and I'm like, we should probably like tell your mom or whatever. And so, because they're like they want to, but they need support. So I'll bring the mom in, and so I'll be like, "Hey, so we want to talk to you about something. I'm just wondering, is there ever a time that you made a really big mistake that you feel really embarrassed about?" And they're like, they see where I'm going, and they're like, "Yeah, because I'm a human." And then so that kind of bridge, I think, is helpful in issues of shame and guilt.
That's good to know. Very good to know. I learned something new every day, and
Yay!
yeah, so that's really good
Yay
to
for the win.
for the win. Yes. How can emotional wounds show up in the day-to-day behavior? When you think something's wrong, with your preteen or teen, how are they walking wounded that you can kind of identify that, hey, something's going on here?
Yeah, I think I use like a lot the scale of intensity, like if there is a one issue, the teacher told them to stop talking in class and the reaction is 100. And they're like, the teacher hates me and I have to leave school. And you're like, I'm like, there is like drama in teenage world, right? But if it is like so extreme, then it's like they're walking around with like second degree emotional burn. Like, I had a kid this week. Basically, the scheme of it was the world is on fire and there's no point, to anything. And I'm like, I mean, it's not great out there. I'm like, but is it like, tell me about the good things that are happening, right? And so to help them hold multiple things at once, I think is the key that and if they can't do that, like that's probably an indicator. They're like, no, everything's terrible. Like, and everyone hates me and whatever. If they're not able to at some point come over the hump of the nuance, I think that that's significant.
So why do some young people, or do they shut down instead of talking about their emotions and how they're feeling?
I have kids. I have like a weekly kid that constantly tells me, this is the only place I go where I'm not interrupted. I see a lot of kids who, and I respect this so much for the parents, the client I see is the sibling of a kid that's like on fire, like that's like causing lots of chaos. And the parents will be like, we want you to see this kid because we're afraid this kid's needs are getting neglected. So, like, just mad respect for that. And so I think like for that, and that kid is one of those. And so I think that like for that kid, they do a calculation of, is it worth it? Like to like take up some of the energy that my parents like have left over. That is tricky. But I think that the quickest thing that shuts kids down is the instant advice giving, that they're just gonna say, or kids will tell me, I don't like it when my mom does this. I'm like, well, could we maybe talk to her about it? And they say, no, because my mom says, because I'm the worst mom ever. That's why you're telling me. And I think that it's fair to feel defensive, right? Because you're a human raising little humans. Of course you're not perfect. And so I think that like everyone in a scenario being defensive can make it shut down pretty quick.
Mhm. That's really interesting, and I think it's probably because maybe the mom feels this, she's got her own societal pressures and, maybe her childhood wasn't the greatest and wasn't supportive, and then, you're unlocking that. And so what is one thing if you think, and I feel like sometimes, kids can be different with different people. And as a person who's gone through therapy myself on and off for many years, I enjoy my time talking to a therapist, whatever therapy I'm going through, because it's that my time with them. And I believed in that system, but anytime I've talked to friends of mine and suggested, hey, maybe your child should go seek therapy because you're just, you're on this hamster wheel. How can you kind of convince even the child to see value in seeing a professional such as yourself?
Like I feel fairly lucky in this area, fortunate, because that's not a tricky spot for me. I'm usually, like, come across as pretty disarming, and I'm short, so that helps. Like, when they're 11, they're taller than me, it's really
Yeah.
unfortunate. And I have a therapy dog, who's fast asleep because, we're hard at work. But I always tell parents, I don't see anyone who doesn't wanna be here, past the first time when they don't know what to expect. And so I do an intake with just parents, and I'll be like, "Does my dog's name is Willow. Does Willow know that you're here today, and how does Willow feel?" And they'll be like, "Yeah, they actually asked for support. They know things are really bad or whatever." Like, I have 2 offices, the other one looks like a therapeutic Disneyland exploded with all the joys. This is my more chill room. I'm fairly disarming, and so I say, "We'll be deciding if you wanna come back here, I'll be deciding if I can help, mom will be deciding if she wants to Uber you back," and so it's a fluid conversation, and it's usually fine. I think that I'm very much not what they anticipated, and so I like that. I live for that moment when they realize, like, "Oh, she's kinda cool. She sounds like a cartoon, but she's kinda cool." So, I think that the kids that are already open to it, like, that's half the battle, but I also think it's how you talk about mental health at home, that it's like, because I always tell parents in intake, I want you to frame this, like, when you're talking to them, as this is a gift we're giving to you, as opposed to there's something wrong with you. And I'm like, could you imagine being 10 and having a place to unload? Like, how different? And people are like, yeah, that'd be great. That'd be real great. And so, like, and again, their generation is shifting a lot. I got a call once that the mom said, "My third grader got told by another third grader on the playground about you." And she's like, "Is that the cutest referral you've ever had in your life?" And I'm like, I do believe it is. I think that the air around it is changing, and it's less stigmatized.
Just saying, "Hey, maybe just try it out once
Yeah.
and see how you feel," right?
Right, and I do in my office, I always go over, I'm, like, with the kid, and I tell the parents in intake, but I say, "So I'm a therapist, and so I ask nosy questions to try to help you feel better. If there's something you don't wanna answer, not now, not yet, not ever, that is always honored, and you say pass." And you see their little shoulders kinda, like, relax because, like, I was like, "'Cause I don't wanna answer things, I don't wanna answer, like, I want the freedom," as opposed to this power dynamic that they think they have to answer because I'm an adult.
When you said that, that's because as parents, as a mom myself, as soon as, like, there's an issue, I'm like, "Tell me,
Yeah,
what happened? Like, I need to fix this because 'cause I'm trying to help my child. Tell
right.
me, give me all the details, give me all this." And sometimes they're like, "I don't want it, like, I just don't wanna talk about it right now," or blah, and I think of it as a way of my failure is I'm not connecting with
Yeah,
my kid, something's wrong, da, da, da,
yeah.
and so when you say if their therapist says, "Hey, if you don't wanna talk about it, that's okay too," and just shrugging your shoulders down, I could see that sense of relief.
I find they circle back to it themselves. I would say in response to what you just said about, like, you wanna fix it, I would say that, but, like, one of the top reasons, like, where I hear kids, like, not want to say a thing to their parents is that they are 100% confident that mom's gonna call the school, and that, like, mom is going she's like, "She's gonna embarrass me, and she's gonna think we'll take care of this, and it's gonna be 10 times worse." And so they're like, "Please don't tell my mom this thing that's like a gray area, because, like, I always, unless they say they're going to hurt themselves, someone else, or someone's hurting them. And so I always tell kids, I won't quote you, but your parents going to want to know what's happening in here. If there's something in the borderline bullying, like, I'll be like, "So do you want me to bring parent in? Or do you want me to talk to them myself? Do you want me to call them?" They're like, a lot of times, if it's something with another kid at school, they're like, or a team or whatever, they're like, "Please, like, my mom will, like, come in raging because she wants to fix it, because she
Yeah.
cares about you." You know what I mean? But, like, kids are like, there's no world in which mom is just gonna let that pass.
So, what should adults avoid saying when a child is upset?
Oh, there's lots of things. I think sometimes we try to minimize, like, "Oh, like, no, you're okay. No, it's like, I get, but you're fine." And again, I always say to parents, like, because I get phone calls and they're like, "I think I broke my kid." I'm like, "First of all, your kid's not broken. Second of all, your kid is being raised by humans, so there's a margin of error already. So let's start there." It's really important. My book, like, is titled With Love because I really want it to come from a place of that, as opposed to, like, I know things and here's what I know on a pedestal. It's just like, this is coming from a place of love, of, like, it's hard. to like care for kids while caring for your inner child at the same time. With that said, sometimes we can inadvertently invalidate a kid by being like, no, no, you're okay. You're okay. Instead of again letting them feel their feelings, that it's like, yeah, that's pretty crappy. And like not like, going straight to let's resolve it. I think that that's hard. And so they're just like they're going to tell me, "Yeah, well, I'm not a kid starving in Africa." You know?
Watch 10 kilometers in the snow to go to school, right?
Yeah, like, and I think comparative suffering is never helpful. Because I mean that doesn't help the kid starving in Africa, like to be told to finish their food. And so I think that when we, in an effort to help, when we deny kids of their experience, that invalidation can go deep.
If you are struggling and you're listening to this podcast and you're like, I don't even know where to start to connect with my kid, and I know they are struggling, and I know there's like 10 steps. What is like one thing you would want somebody listening to this to take away?
My very first thought was if you can think about something that is valid, not making up a thing, to apologize to your kid for. And that it's and not in a mea culpa like way, not in a like, I'm sorry, I'm the worst. Like in a because like our generation parents, like that wasn't really a thing. Hey, yesterday, like when XYZ happened, I really wish I could do that over and handle that different. And I am sorry that I was scattered and let my anger like come up. I've seen that make such an intense connection with kids. They're like, because it makes them feel like a human, that they're, not just like anything can happen to me. You can do whatever you want. And again, I wouldn't want anyone to go to the extreme of like, I'm sorry for every day, every time that I ever like didn't show up for you, like not like that. I can't even tell you the amount of times that I have seen an apology shift the plates and the foundation of a relationship, because you're acknowledging I am a human, and I'm not saying it's okay, but I'm a human and I didn't do this great and I want to do better.
And I'm going to add to that, not only the apology, but as the parent, then be accountable to that. And say, okay, well, this is what happened. That doesn't mean I'm going to do it again. It might happen again, but I'm going to try really hard, because a part of the apology is correcting the behavior that caused that in the first place.
Again, I really want like listeners to hear like you are a human. And it is really hard to be a human. We haven't done this before, and it's really hard outside. It's really hard. And so, like, the fact that you care about doing something different, that this child or, like other people that you care about, kids in your life that you care about, you're doing better than a lot of the population.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the first start. And also reading your amazing book. Yes, because a part of that process is also healing your own inner
Yes.
child. Stacy, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, what is the best way to reach out to you?
Yes. So my Instagram is Hope Restored. And so find me there. And my website is stacyshaver.com. On there, like if you put in your email address, you can get the first chapter of my book. And then there's also a link like that goes directly to my book, which is on Audible, Spotify, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. And it's me doing the audiobook, because I think that there are a lot of funny parts in it, and I would have been mad if someone didn't say it right.
Taking ownership for your branding. I love it. Stacy, this was really insightful. And yeah, if you, for whatever reason are not ready to take the relationship or go into seeking professional support, reading about it, learning about it, I think is a very economical way to start the process and the healing journey, so you can connect with your children better. So thank you for being here with me today, Stacy. You were amazing. I see why kids really resonate with you. If this conversation helped you see kids, teens, or even your younger self with a little more understanding and gentleness, then this episode has done its job. Remember, behavior is communication. Big feelings deserve safety, and healing is something we can return to at any age. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with somebody who might need it. And if you want more conversations on emotional health, healing, and real connection, make sure you follow the show so you never miss an episode. Until next time, remember, your energy is yours to reclaim, your story is yours to rewrite, and your next chapter is waiting. And I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.